Okay, so today we're going to talk about a controversial subject, the drawing grid. First, I have to get on my soapbox for a little while and tell you that I don't teach using the drawing grid. If you're wondering what a drawing grid is, it's a method where you grid off something clear and overlay it on top of your photograph, and then you grid off your page, and then you're going to copy it to try to get accurate proportions. I don't teach this in my studio, and there are two reasons why. One is that I think it's really, really super important that you start to learn to think about how you're taking 3D space and flattening it onto the two-dimensional page. That's something that I think takes time. It takes interacting with somebody about in order to understand that translation. It's almost like you're translating from a foreign language to another language. It's 3D, creating the illusion of 3D on a flat page. So when I see people using the grid, oftentimes they don't have that skill of translating the 3D to the 2D. So the grid winds up flattening everything out, and it makes it look really super flat and shallow and just not very professional, and drawings could look a lot better without the use of the grid. The other reason that I'm not a big fan of using the drawing grid is because I think that what happens is that when you're paying attention to how the grid is in each separate individual piece, it's great. A lot of times people can get each piece looking really, really good. Each separate section looks really good, but they never stop and look at the entire picture and then make sure that that really works as a whole. So those are the two reasons that I don't teach the grid. However, I would like to show you how to make a grid if you are wanting to use it. And I'm going to show you how to use it. And I really think that there's a time and a place for using it. So the time and the place would be after you have really good structural understanding of what something looks like and feels like when it takes up space in the 3 dimensions. And then you also need to really understand proportion and sighting and perspective in order to place it on the page. The grid is going to help you with your proportion. It's going to help you get better shapes and sizes in relationship to one another and placement, but it can't be used as a crutch. It's not a shortcut for the hard work that it really takes to understand how to draw something on the page and make it look like it's the illusion of space. The other thing that I would say it's helpful for is if you are an artist and you understand that and you're on a deadline, you have a production deadline and you need to make something very quickly, then I think it's a great shortcut, but it does not substitute for actually having the knowledge that's really important in order to be able to draw something so that it looks realistic. That being said, I'm going to take you step by step on how to make one. Oftentimes on different art supply store sites or at different art supply stores, you can buy a grid, but you're limited to the size. And they tend to be a little bit of a smaller size. And then they're great because you can hold them up if you're looking at a landscape and look through the grid. They're see-through. And you can get a sense of your proportion of your landscape by looking through that. It's almost like a viewfinder grid. However, it's not that great if you're working in the studio and you're working from a photograph. Oftentimes they're smaller than the photograph that you would print out would be. And so I came up with this little shortcut way to actually make a grid. And you're going to see I'm going to use these materials to do some other things that I think are much more helpful than the grid, like the axis lines and sighting with structural line. So I'm going to give you lots of other videos on tips on how to use these same materials in more effective ways. But the cool thing is that you can make a grid and you can make as many grids as you want for much less than you can buy one online at a store. So let's take a look at the materials that you're going to need and the steps to take in order to make one of those grids yourself. Okay, so looking here, these are the important materials that you're going to need. The first thing is that I went to Office Depot. It was the closest office supply store that was near to my studio. And I bought non-glare heavyweight, you don't want to get the really thin ones, So non-glare heavyweight sheet protectors. And I was able to get about 50 of them for, I think, about $15. It was like $12 to $15. The great thing about having 50 is that you can make as many grids as you want to, or you can use them for other projects, which I'm going to show you in the next couple of videos. So here's one of those sheets that's blank. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a grid on it, and then I can put any piece of paper or photograph in it, and then I have my grid, and it fits the photograph perfectly because I printed it off my printer on 8.5 by 11, and these are 8.5 by 11 sheets. Let me show you how to do that. Then we're going to transfer it to this so that we can do a drawing. So I use the Office Max non-glare heavyweight sheet protectors. And then the other thing that I have in my studio, you might have a T-square, that would also work. I'm going to use this self-healing cutting mat, and it has ruler marks on it. It helps me to make sure that I'm getting truly right angles, just like a T-square would. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grid this off. I think the way that I did this was 2-inch squares. I tend to prefer a little bit of a bigger grid, 2 or 3-inch squares rather than 1-inch squares, because I find that 1-inch, it just gets a little bit too tedious. So I'm going to start off here. I've got a metal edge ruler. Now this is also important. Somewhere in here I lost my plastic ruler. Yeesh. There it is. The plastic ruler works really well because it also has a grid on it so that you can see if you're lining your edges up so that they're askew or that they're really vertical and horizontal. However, if you're using a plastic ruler on plastic with a Sharpie, what you're going to find is that the Sharpie tends to bleed between the two pieces of plastic, and you get a really fuzzed out, blurry line. So you don't want to use a plastic ruler that touches the sheet protector itself. You want to use a metal ruler that has a cork back like this, because then it actually lifts up and away from the sheet protector, and that gives you a little bit of space so that your Sharpie doesn't bleed. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the edge of my sheet protector with the grid on my self-healing cutting mat. And then I'm going to line up my ruler perfectly. And now this part I'm just going to kind of speed through. You're going to see I'm going to lay out 2-inch grids this way and then 2-inch grids this way. And I don't want to bore you while I do each step, but I want you to be able to see the final product. Okay, so you can see that I made 2-inch squares until I got to this last section that was a little bit off, and then I made 2-inch squares across until I got to this last section that was a little bit off. That's okay, because it's still going to give me a small portion to now look at how my photograph is looking in the grid. And then I'm going to take this awesome photograph that I took of my friend Ellen's horse. This is Tomba. He's a handsome gentleman. And I'm going to slide that photo in. And now you can see his image gridded. And then next, I'm going to show you in the next video how to translate that here to the page. So you can do that. It's really cool. You can reuse this grid. You can slide in different photos. And you could actually even hold it up and look through it, although this one isn't super transparent. You would probably have to get the thinner, not the heavyweight sheet protectors, but the lighter ones for that. So again, a grid is not my favorite method. It's not something that I teach with my students in person or in classes. However, I know a lot of you out there are using it. A lot of my students come in having worked with other instructors and they've used it. And if you are going to use it, make sure you understand spatial thinking so that you can really see how to translate something 3D to your 2D page. And then this is the easiest, cheapest method to be able to get a grid, and the sheet protectors will work for a lot of other things for drawings, for tools. So you might want to try it this way instead of just buying your own grid online. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you all so much for watching. More videos are coming soon, so if you wish to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and do that. And also you can check out my website, lzmstudio.com.